Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Let me start with something that Jamie at Reuters pointed out. Sterling is starting to jump around quite a bit on the Brexit headlines, he says. Sterling implied volatility is now the highest relative to the euro implied volatility since December last year, so it's really jumping around. And mostly to the positive. It's back at 130 or just holding on around that level. And I thought to myself, clearly Barnier prefers Theresa May over Boris Johnson and therefore is seeking to accommodate Theresa May. And obviously someone in 10 Downing Street is waging a quite subtle, high velocity and winning digital strategy against Boris. Look at the stream of recent photos, for example. He looks downcast in nearly every one. As a clever photographer at work. And old stories and new are being regurgitated. Home thoughts. I went back to A. Milne. Rabbit, said Pooh to himself. I like talking to Rabbit. He talks about sensible things. He uses short, easy words like, what about lunch? And help yourself, Pooh. I ought to go and see Rabbit. Piglet sidled up to Pooh from behind. Pooh, he whispered. Yes, Piglet. Nothing, said Piglet, taking Pooh's paw. I just wanted to be sure of you. And then, I think we dream so we don't have to be apart for so long. If we're in each other's dreams, we can be together all the time. Political reflections, all that we have to do is to send 2 mujahedeen to the furthest point east to raise a piece of cloth on which is written Al-Qaeda. Osama bin Laden said that in 2004. This is an opinion in New York Times. I learned that Osama bin Laden's strategic logic was to embroil the United States in a never-ending conflict, to ultimately bankrupt the country. All that we have to do is to send 2 mujahedeen to the furthest point east to raise a piece of cloth on which is written Al-Qaeda, he said in 2004, in order to make generals race there to cause America to suffer human, economic, and political losses without their achieving for it anything of note. Why are we continuing to do what bin Laden wanted all along? Asked the writer. I refuse to take Atta's orders or bin Laden's. I will not stay quiet to end the war. Joe Quinn is a United States Army veteran. He's got a very valid point. The View from Moscow, a powerful signal to the world, Asia Times. The exercises are the largest since the Cold War era Zapad drills of 1981, making Vostok 2018 the biggest maneuvers since the collapse of the Soviet Union. The numbers are outstanding and astounding. 300,000 troops, more than 1,000 planes, helicopters and drones, up to 80 combat and logistic ships, and about 36,000 vehicles. Both the Northern and Pacific fleets will be deployed in the Sea of Okhotsk, the Bering Strait and the Sea of Japan. It's a big show of force. And in this clip from Reuters, Putin and Xi, with kitchen aprons on, fried traditional Russian pancakes paired with caviar and vodka shots. This issue about it being a 3-legged stool in the US, obviously a very important thing, and then Russia and China, in a way, one of the effects of this sort of standoff with Putin is to push him into Xi Jinping's arms. And those who believe that Trump is following a reasonably sophisticated and logical foreign policy think part of his strategy with Putin has been to try and prize him away and back into what, a reverse Kissinger type thing. Kissinger, of course, used China to triangulate Russia. October 2015, I called Putin a geopolitical grandmaster. December 2016, I wrote about how he'd interfered with the US election. I was quoting Don DeLillo's "We Have a Deviate Tomahawk." And in that piece I said, at this moment, Putin has Fortress Europe surrounded, the intellectual father of the new zeitgeist that propelled Brexit, Le Pen, the Five-Star Movement in Italy, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, I said, is Vladimir Putin. In the Middle East, it is Putin who is calling the shots in Aleppo, and in a quite delicious irony, it looks like he has pocketed OPEC as well. That is debatable. I admire Putin, and I say it free of charge, Italy's Interior Minister Matteo Salvini told Hard Talk. Stark warning by the CCP daily Global Times on India's link-up with US-led alliance system in Indo-Pacific to counterbalance and contain China. India views China as the main threat to its rise. This is via Badra Punchline. And I remain of the view that Xi Jinping has Narendra Modi surrounded, from the Dockland Plateau up there to Gwadar, Pakistan next door, to the Hambantota port, plus China's moving at speed to extend its influence in the Indian Ocean. Djibouti is another Hambantota, I think. President Xi, who pledged to punch back at US on trade 2 months ago, now his economic envoy is telling US companies Beijing won't allow retribution, and asking what's changed. And I said, what's changed is they're getting a little bit walloped. And that POTUS's signature success has been this tariff war, chicky-run financial warfare and occasional tweetfare strategy of his. The tariff battle with the US will probably cost China 700,000 jobs in the event of further escalation. Job losses would come if the US imposes a 25% tariff on $200 billion in Chinese exports, and China retaliates by devaluing its currency by 5% and adding to levies on US goods, according to economists at JP Morgan. If the US imposes 25% tariffs on all Chinese imports and China retaliates with the levies already announced, the measures will mean 5.5 million lost jobs and 1.3 percentage points cut off GDP growth. If the US further escalates the tariff war, the impact on China will be larger, they wrote in the note. And that's what I was writing about on the 9th of July when I said tariff wars, who blinks first. And just to reiterate, I do think this aggressive foreign economic policy, coercive sanctions, whatever you want to call it, currency warfare, has been the signature success of his administration. It's highly effective, and I think he can keep it up. It's working a treat. Woodward, page 69, Trump, after being told about the Steele dossier, later told his attorney about the alleged prostitutes in Moscow. Trump said, "I've got enough problems with Melania and girlfriends and all that. I don't need any more. I can't have Melania hearing about that." The known New York books in 1999, when Scott McNeely, the founder and CEO of Sun Microsystems, declared, "You have zero privacy, get over it." Most of us, still new to the World Wide Web, had no idea what he meant. It's an interesting essay in your books about, outside-in living, this sort of new digitized world, and all our information is controlled at a mass scale. International markets, US 10-year yields, look at this chart signaling interest rates, prices are going lower, rates are going higher. I think in response to something I read from Lisa Abramovitz, from a fellow saying he thought the dollar had now topped out. I think far from it. I think we're at risk of a move to the upside which could turn exponential and asymmetric. And this further confirms my thinking. This is from Peter Brent, sold some here, more on the close. This is the September euro dollar next year, which is implying where US interest rates will be. That is signaling higher from here. And I think all of that becomes US Treasury sold 3-year notes with 2.82% yields, the highest since May 2007. All dollar supportive, I think. And we're going to continue, I think, to see a very skittish marketplace. Currency markets, euro dollar 115.92, dollar index 95.18, Japanese yen 111.53, Swiss franc 0.9743, the pound is at 130.12, Australian dollar it's 0.7107, having dipped below 71.00. India rupee, new fresh record low, 72.855. South Korean won, 1127.84. The rial, 415.27. That's another multi-year low. Egyptian pound, 17.8390. And the rand, counterintuitively, has strengthened a little bit, 15.1034. I think it's a sell again. Dollar index, this is at 95.18. I'm still believer in it, looking for 100 with a stop at 94. Euro dollar 115.92 doesn't seem to be able to get going to the upside, and therefore I think it's best to remain structurally short, especially given that I think there's a risk of this falling back quite a bit as well. Apple rose the most in 5 weeks on heavier than average volume as investors piled in on the eve of the company's annual iPhone introduction. Shares rallied 2.5% on Tuesday, increasing the gain since the start of the year to 32%. The 3 new models Apple is expected to introduce this week will likely boost Apple's average smartphone price by 5.4% year over year to $793 in fiscal year 2019. It's a great product. The best performing crypto is the one that's the biggest joke. It's been a brutal bear market for crypto since peaking in early January. The entire space has lost around $640 billion. Every time there's been a brief rally, it's been followed up by relentless selling. According to On-Chain FX, a site that tracks cryptocurrencies, only one coin has seen major gains over the last 30 days, and it happens to be the one that's the biggest joke of all, the Doji coin. The coin, which was introduced in 2013 as a play on the once popular Doji meme, has surged over 160% in about a month. What needs to happen is just a come-to-Jesus moment for Elon Musk. Shah downgraded Tesla to the equivalent of a hold and slashed his price target to $300 on Tuesday, writing in a report that the company is no longer investable. Commodity markets, gold 1195.25, my target is $1,000. Crude oil strong, $69.73, feels real muscular again. Emerging markets, another day in everything is discounted emerging market land. Have a look at that. The India rupee has hit fresh lows. India 10-year sovereign bond yields is beginning to buckle, rose 4 basis points to the highest level since November 2014. MSCI emerging markets index futures down again, falls below 1,000, almost 30% from its January high. Sub-Saharan Africa Nelson Chamisa, who was denied victory at the July elections by cheating and chicanery, will be declared the country's president on Saturday at a mock inauguration staged by his NDC party. It's all the rage these days. A key crossing point between one-time bitter enemies Ethiopia and Eritrea set to reopen after a border war that shut it for more than 20 years ago. Border post just north of the Ethiopian town of Zalambese is on the main road linking the two countries. The leaders of Ethiopia and Eritrea are there to witness the reopening, which is part of their ongoing rapprochement. And as I said previously, the 90 or so days, I wrote it when he'd been in power, about 90 days, represent the most consequential arrival of an African politician on the African stage since Nelson Mandela walked out of prison, blinking in the sunlight. Rebellion boils as Cameroon's president seeks to extend rule. Most extraordinary, President Biya appears to be a shoo-in to extend his 36-year rule in elections next month. He's had no success, however, in stifling a rebellion in Anglophone regions that's threatening to split the mainly French-speaking Central African nation. Second longest serving head of state in Africa, 85 years old, facing 8 candidates, October 7th vote, overshadowed by insurgent attacks, a violent clampdown by the security forces, drop in production of Cameroon's biggest cocoa growing areas. Thousands of people have fled to neighbouring Nigeria. Situations become so polarised that days after Samuel Qaeda, the Archbishop of the commercial capital Douala, called for mediation to avert a useless, senseless civil war and urged Biya to step down, shots were fired at the cleric's residence. It really is an extraordinary situation. He held his first cabinet meeting in about 24 months earlier this year. You have cattle, you are big farmers, you can feed your children. Why then resort to birth control? This is my opinion. I see no reason to control births in Tanzania, President Magufuli. And then Bloomberg and bulldozers Tanzania, the law court gives rare flicker of dissent. In President Magufuli's Tanzania, it's illegal to protest. It can also be illegal to blog anonymously or criticize Parliament. If you're a schoolgirl who becomes pregnant and wants to keep attending classes, that's illegal. If you're a musician who sings about sex or politics, your songs might be illegal. The lack of freedom getting you down, you could complain about it all on social media, except that may be illegal. The institution of the law, though, could be all that's stopping Magufuli, who was elected in late 2015 and is nicknamed the bulldozer, from a greater crackdown. In recent months, the East African nation's High Court has struck down the government-backed suspension of a newspaper and permitted a challenge to a 1997 law that allows local officials to order detention without charge for 48 hours. It may be a sign of tentative resistance in the authoritarian tide. However, I think he's completely interfered with the civil service. We're very nervous of doing anything in case they fall foul of him. But at the same time, some of these things have improved, particularly the port, the revenue they're taking from lesser volume, but they're taking more revenue, confirms that some of his reforms have had some success. But I disagree with him, particularly on freedom of expression and the very aggressive response, it seems, to dissent. Crime stats, a snapshot of murder in South Africa. 57 people are killed every day. Good grief. Game of chicken. US poultry industries say if South Africa drops the quota, they'll tell Trump to retaliate hard against South Africa. I was just thinking to myself, that's where the chickie war might start. 27th of August, I wrote about why I thought the rand was now caught up in the crossfire. South African oil shares down 5.6% this year. Dollar versus rand, this is a 6-month chart. I think you sell the rand with a 14.65 stop. Egyptian pound, an anchor of stability in a turbulent sea, has barely budged, 17.8390. Nigerian gas tanker explosion kills at least 35, that's from Reuters. Nigerian oil share down 12.54% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange up 7% this year. We are now back in the capital city, Antananarivo, for meetings with colleagues today. This is Base Resources. I sit on the board of the Kenyan company that bought a prospect in Madagascar. Dasterio Oyatsi, who's on the board now, chairman of Base Titanium, following the retirement of Professor Joseph Maitha. Coming to Kenya, there's been a huge amount of debate on a story that broke in the Kenyan Standard. about the Eurobond 2 prospectus, which was organised by Citibank, JP Morgan, Standard Bank of South Africa and Standard Chartered. And they're saying in that document, reads, holders of the 2028 notes or the 2048 notes who hold at least 25% in an aggregate principal amount may declare such notes to be immediately due and payable at their principal amount together with accrued interest if the issuer, Government of Kenya, ceases to be a member of the IMF or ceases to be eligible to use the general resources of the IMF. Now, coincidentally, there is an IMF facility of $1.5 billion that has come up for renewal this week. And the journalist was saying, or drawing the conclusion, that if that is not rolled over and kept in place, that could be a trigger event for these two Eurobonds, the aggregate amount of $2 billion. Having looked into it further, it's clear that that would not be a trigger event for the calling of those Eurobonds. That's a fact. So it caused quite some debate. However, it does not mean that the $2 billion is callable over a failure to renew the IMF facility, which I absolutely think that they should, because we're living in a much more turbulent period and the IMF support counts for much. The EAC is an important market for Kenyan products and absorbs about 21% of its exports. That's the CAN chairman, Sachin Kutka. Nairobi all-share down 6.07% year to date. NSE 20 down 17.96% year to date. My piece over the weekend was VAT, tax and spend. The general conclusion was the government could not afford not to collect this. Every listed share can be seen if you just scroll down the page. Dandora was named after the two British colonialists, Dan and his wife Dora, who both owned a sisal plantation in the area. Most Kenyans, I found this interesting, were affected by drought and violence than Linkia thought. Approximately 15% of respondents reported having to relocate due to drought. I never thought it was that high. Thank you for stopping by.